Hello everyone. Today I would like to introduce you to the Lambda function in AWS and then show you how you can create your very first Lambda function. But first, what is AWS Lambda? AWS Lambda is a serverless event-driven compute service offered by AWS, okay? But when we say it is serverless, what do we mean? Does it mean it doesn't have a server? No. It basically means you don't have to worry about provisioning or buying any server, okay? That means AWS already does that for you. AWS already does the configuration and the maintenance of such infrastructures, okay? So all you have to do is to bring your code and just write your own functions, basically. Now, but what are we trying to say right here? Okay, basically what we're trying to say is, let's assume you have, like, let's say for example, a file processing, application, in which case a user needs to, say maybe upload an image file, and that image file goes into an S3 bucket, and what your application wants to do is to resize the size of that image, okay, that image file. And let's assume that your users don't do this often, okay? Since they do not do this often, that means you don't have to really provision, take for example an EC2 instance, Amazon EC2 instance, to be running 24/7, okay? Because when you have your EC2 instance running 24/7, you get charged for that, okay? But rather, you can have your function that would help to reduce the size of this image file inside what we call AWS Lambda. So what that means is that whenever this image file is being uploaded into the S3 bucket, then that is going to trigger the Lambda function to run and then process your file to either reduce the file size or increase the file size, depending on what you want your application to do. And that's why we said that you only bring your code, that is, you only write your functions, okay? You create the function, and then the AWS Lambda does its own thing. The code will respond to some event, and that event in this example I just cited is that when the image file is uploaded to an S3 bucket. So that is an event. You are uploading, or the user is uploading the image file in your application, and that goes into the S3 bucket, and that triggers the Lambda to actually run, okay? And what that means is that you only pay for the compute time that you consume. Unlike the one for the EC2 I was explaining, in that case, since you are running your EC2 instance 24/7, that means you are being charged every second, okay? Even when your user is not uploading any image, you are being charged because you are running the EC2 instance 24/7, okay? But in the case of AWS Lambda, you are not being charged when your code is not running, okay? Because take note that we said that your code is going to run in response to some event. In this case, an example of the event is when the file gets into the S3 bucket. That is what is going to trigger your code to run, right? So that means that if no user uploads any image, then your code is not going to run. At that point, that means that you are not going to be charged, okay? So that means you are only charged whenever your users upload images that needs to be resized, okay? So you only pay for compute time, okay? And like we said right here, that's why we said that it is event driven, okay? It is serverless, meaning that you don't have to configure or maintain any infrastructure. You don't have to provision any server. AWS does that for you. And it is event driven, okay? And that is because the code is going to run in response to some event, okay? And it is a compute service, okay? It is not a storage service, but a compute service. And a very good advantage of Lambda also is that it easily scales up and down depending on the incoming data, okay? I'm going to show you a cartoon very soon, okay? But first, let's go to this website aws.amazon.com/lambda, and let's see how the Lambda works right here. An example of how it works is this file processing I was just explaining right here. Okay, photograph is being taken and this is being uploaded into Amazon S3 bucket. Immediately this is uploaded to Amazon S3 bucket. This triggered AWS Lambda to run. Okay, and as part of the function in the AWS Lambda, that helps to resize the image. Okay, and then you can see right here the output is that the photo is resized into, say, web mobile or whatever thing you want to do. Okay, now another thing is streaming processing. Let's say you have some streaming data right here coming from Amazon Kinesis. Okay, and that triggers your Lambda, and your Lambda will just run some code that maybe generate hashtag trend data, and then you can save that in Amazon DynamoDB, and then you can create some visualizations off of that. You see, these are different use cases of using Lambda. Take note that you are not going to be charged when the Lambda is not running. Okay, this is pretty good for a service or a part of your application that you don't need it to be running every time. It is event driven. Maybe whenever you have some streaming data coming, that is when you want this to trigger. Okay, so it's possible that those data doesn't come every now and every time, right? It is whenever it comes, it triggers the AWS Lambda. This is also another example of in web applications. Let's say you have a weather map data, and then you have your user, they click to get some weather information, and then when they click that, this goes through the Amazon API gateway. Immediately that happens, it triggers the Lambda, the AWS Lambda, right, which then runs the code to retrieve the local weather data that is in the DynamoDB. You can say DynamoDB contains the weather data used by the app. So it is the DynamoDB that has the data, right? So this Lambda function then retrieves this information from here and then sends it back to the user. Okay, these are some of the examples of or use cases of using AWS Lambda, and this is a very good thing for you to really know, because as data engineers or machine learning engineers, when you are creating your pipelines, these are part of what you are going to be using depending on the requirement. You can see that AWS Lambda is a compute service that runs your code in response to events and automatically manages the compute resources. Okay, it automatically handles that. Okay, let's look at something right here real quick, guys. When you click on this, you can click on this, or maybe you right click and open a new tab, whatever way you want to do that. Okay, when you do that, and then it's going to bring you to this link right here. Okay, if it doesn't bring you to this link, let's say it brings you to this link right here. Let's say it brings you to this link, because in some cases it might bring you to this link where it says functions. Take note that here you have your region, and then here you have functions. It brings you here. So if it brings you here, just remove these functions and just type begin. Okay, when you type begin, then it brings you to this page. Okay, now what I want to show you right here is, let's come to this tab of Python. Now you can see that this is, I want to show you how it works. Okay, this is an example of a function or code that you're going to be deploying on AWS Lambda. Okay, now by default the function name is called Lambda_handler, and it takes two arguments, event and context. Okay, I'm going to be explaining what these two arguments is, but first I will explain event first, and then later on I will explain context. Okay, now this event basically is that argument that refers to the input data that is passed to this function, to the Lambda function, whenever it is invoked. Okay, so whenever your Lambda function is invoked, the data that is passed to that function is in this event, okay, and this event is mostly JSON data is in JSON format mostly. Okay, I'll show you an example of that when we are creating our first Lambda function. Okay, I will show you that. So just take note that this event is what contains, or it refers to the input data that we are passing to the Lambda function. Okay, and take note that the structure of this event also varies. It varies depending on the source of the event and the data format that is being used. Okay, so but I will show you that usually it's in JSON format usually. Okay, so basically this context, what it does is this: it's an argument that refers to an object that provides information about the runtime environment, okay, and execution context of the Lambda function. So what happens is that whenever your Lambda function is invoked, AWS provides a context object as one of the arguments, okay, to this Lambda handler. And this context contains a lot of information that we can extract some information that we need from. An example is, let me take you to this link right here. Okay, you see AWS Lambda context object in Python. So let's assume I want to extract the function name of my Lambda function. Okay, I can just do context.function name. I can say context.function_version to get the version of my function. Okay, I can do all this. I can do memory limits in megabytes. You see the amount of memory that's allocated for the function. So if you want to get some vital information based on what you need, you can use that context to get that, because AWS Lambda is already saving all these things for you in that context. Okay, we can extract that. Very good. Now let us come back here, guys. If I run this, I want to show you something right here. You can see that when I run this, I have hello from Lambda, which is what is being returned right here. Now also I told that Lambda responds to events. You can see what is happening here. So how did I get here? What I did was to click this next. Okay, then you can see a very good animation right here that is showing me that from a streaming analytics tool, you see some events are being passed to my Lambda. Okay, and you can see that this is showing us right here the type of what kind of load is coming onto this Lambda. Okay, as you can see right now, because you don't get too much load right here, we only get one instance of this running. Basically what we see right here, we only have one Lambda being invoked right here. Okay, but if I come here and I click this several times, you can see that this is scaling. It is scaling, right? It is scaling automatically for us. When I stopped it, it scaled down again. When I click it several times, you can see it is scaling. If I begin to also add some data from our mobile application, which goes through the mobile backend, you see what happens. When I click that, you can see that it's scaling. That's a very good attribute of using or advantage of using AWS Lambda. It scales automatically for you. Let's say we have some image processing app right here. If I get some image and I put it in my S3 bucket, let's see how this is also going to, the Lambda is going to respond. If I do this, you can see I put it in S3 bucket, it goes to Lambda. You can see when I do, as I put more of it, you can see that we are scaling. Okay, you can see that, guys. So that is what happens in Lambda, right? AWS Lambda. You don't have to scale up or scale down yourself. Okay, depending on how much data that is coming in, AWS Lambda does the scaling for you, and that is very, very fantastic, guys. Okay, now that we now understand what AWS Lambda function is, we've gotten some introduction to that. Let us create our own very first Lambda function here, guys. So what you can do is you can come right here and do create function. Okay, now one thing you need to know is that you can create your function from scratch, or you can use some blueprint. You can say build a Lambda application from sample code and configuration preset for common use case, or you can build it from a container image. Okay, but in this case we are going to be building from scratch. Okay, so let us give our function a name right here. I'll call it greetings. Okay, and then you need to choose your runtime, and that is based on what language you want to use to write your function. In this case, I'm going to be using Python, and then I will just select Python 3.9. You can decide to select 3.8 or 3.7, but I will select 3.9. Okay, and then this architecture, you can just leave that as it is. Okay, now permissions. So this says create a new role with basic Lambda permissions. If we select this, what happens? It says that Lambda will create an execution role named this with permission to upload logs to Amazon CloudWatch logs. So what this role is just going to give us right here is just for us to be able to upload the logs that comes out of what we are running right here in our AWS Lambda function to Amazon CloudWatch, so that we can do some monitoring. Okay, if I select use an existing role, that means I can come to this drop down and select whatever role that I've already created before. Okay, or if I say create a new role from AWS policy templates, I can come here and give it a name and choose some templates that are here, because there are some already templates. Let's say I want to have Amazon S3 object read only permission. I want the Lambda to only be able to read object from S3. I can just select that. That way I don't have to, go write a new policy. Okay, but I will take this out, but I will only select, since we are not using S3 in our first Lambda function, I will just create a new role with basic Lambda function. Basic, that means that we can upload logs automatically to CloudWatch. Okay, and then I'll come here and I'll click create function. Okay, this is going to create function for, as you can see, is in the process of creating that function. Let's give it few seconds. Very good. You can see now the name of the function that we created, the AWS Lambda function that we created, is greetings. But now inside these greetings, automatically AWS Lambda will then create this module for us, lambda_function.py, this .py file, which is this one right here. Now this .py file now create a function for us. Now this is the function that will be invoked whenever we get an event. Okay, remember I was just showing you a few minutes ago that this will get the argument that this gets is event and context. I've explained what event is. That is the argument that passes the input data to this function, and then the context. These are the information that AWS Lambda collects for us that we can extract from this context if needed. Okay, very good. Now let us write a very simple basic function right here, and let us test our very first Lambda function. Let us see how it works. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I can take all these out. Okay, if I take all that out, what I can just do right here is that I can say print, this is my first AWS Lambda function. Okay, now also for the sake of our time, I will do some copy and paste right here. So I will say if name in event. Remember I just told you that this event is an argument that contains the data that we need, and usually this is in JSON. Okay, so I am saying if name is in this event that is in this JSON. Okay, now what do I want to do? I want to extract the value of that name. So I will say event in bracket name. If I extract the value, since this is not a Python class, I believe that you understand what I'm doing in terms of Python right here, but I will also explain to you briefly. So what I'm doing right here is I'm collecting the value of this key. Okay, event name equals to name. Then I'm putting that inside this f string. So I'm saying hello, whatever name this is going to be passed here. And also is that I also want to get the function name. That's not really necessary though, but I just wanted to show you something right here. I just wanted to show you the essence of this context. Okay, so this context, I want to extract function name, like I was just showing you in this link right here that talks about the context methods or the context properties. Okay, function name. You can also play around with these different other context properties, but I just want to show you with this function name. Okay, now I will say that is there. Then I will say the function name is, I'm passing whatever function name right here, I'm passing it to this right here. Okay, and then I will say else. Okay, else, let me put this right here. Else, my message is hello somebody. The function name is this. Remember we already collected the function name here in this context. Okay, so yeah, whatever name we have in my argument is what is going to be here. But if I don't know the name, I will just say hello somebody. Okay, and then I will return. The message, okay. Now that we have this, remember, one thing you need to do is that whenever you make any changes to your function right here, you need to deploy. Okay, deploy basically like you are saving it, right? So we deploy it. So I'll click deploy, but make sure that there is no error right here. Well, if there is an error, we would figure it out and debug. Okay, now that we have this, now for us to test this, we have to then go and create a test event. Now let's come right here and click test. So now that we click test, it's telling us to create a new event. So what is the event that what's the event name that we want to give our test? So I can say greetings event name. Let me just give it that name, greetings event name. Then let's leave that this way. This is private right now. This event is only available in the Lambda console and to the event creator. Okay, now remember what I just told you, that this event could take different formats depending on the source of the data. You can see that this one gives me a template right here, hello world. If I come right here, you can see that there are different kinds of templates. Let's just take, for example, if I select DynamoDB updates, you can see this is an example, a template of what is required if I want to use DynamoDB, some of the information that is going to be asking me if I want to update. Okay, let's take, for example, let's just take a look at one more. Let's look at Kinesis data firehose. If that is the template I want to use, you can see the type of information, the type of data that I will be passing to my function. Okay, but in the case of this one, I want to use a very simple one. If I come down, which is the hello world, and that is what gives me this. Okay, now if I take out all this, remember that in my function, what I put right in my function is I put name. We are talking about name right there. Okay, so if I call the name James, okay, let me save this before we test so that you see what I'm talking about. There is an error in your JSON event. Correct it before saving. Let us see. It says there is an error. Let me take out this and see what the error is. Okay, now so you wanted me to take out that comma. Okay, remember that here we have name. Okay, now my name right here is lowercase n, so I need to go back. I can come back to my test right here, and then I can change this to n. Okay, when I change that, I need to save again. Okay, now remember that we have deployed our code. If we make any changes here, we need to click deploy again. Okay, because any changes that you make, you need to redeploy. Okay, and also we have the event that we want to pass to this. We have already created that in this JSON. Okay, now what our code is saying is that we are collecting the value, right? And we are saying that we should put the value here. So that means whatever name I have, since I put James right now, I should say hello James. The function name is whatever function name we are collecting right here. Okay, but if there is no key that is called name in my event, if there is no name, if there is nothing like this in my event, then I should be returning hello somebody. The function name is blah blah blah. Okay, now let us test this. Let us see. Let me close this right here. Now let us click tests. Very good, this has run. You can see right here, guys. Hello, our response says hello James. The function name is greetings. Remember that our function name, remember, is greetings, right? And if we say our function name, we mean the AWS Lambda function itself, not the function that we are actually running. Okay, so you can see that in my code I had, this is my first AWS Lambda function. If you remember, we had it here. This is my first AWS Lambda function. Okay, and this is what we are returning right here. Hello James. Let us go to our test and let us change this to John. Let's see what happens. I change this to John. I save. Okay, I can also test from here. If I do tests, you can see it is succeeded. Then I can come right here and say hello John. The function name is greetings. Okay, you can see also this is just telling us how many milliseconds it ran, what is the maximum memory that I just used, 36 megabytes, but the resources that was configured for me was 128 megabyte. You can see how this is working, guys. Now you have been able to create your very first Lambda function. Now you see how this thing is working. Let's take, for example, that instead of name here, I take out the E. You can see that this is not name, right? If I save this, what do you expect to get? Okay, I save it. If you go back to my code, you can see that in our code here, we should expect to see hello somebody. The function name is whatever function name which is greetings, you know. Okay, so let us test. Very good. You can see right here, guys, hello somebody. The function name is greetings. Why did we get hello somebody? Because in our events, we don't have name right here, because in the code we are checking for, in our code we are checking for name, N-A-M-E, but in the test right now I only have N-A-M. Okay, you can see right there, guys, how you can create your very first simple and basic Lambda function. In the next subsequent videos, we are going to be looking into more detail how we can do many more things with AWS Lambda. Take, for example, if you have a JSON file that lands in an S3 bucket, you want to have a trigger to your Lambda function and then convert that that file to another format. Okay, so like take for example, you have a JSON file coming in, get into S3 bucket, that triggers the Lambda function and that converts it to CSV file for you. Or maybe you have a data that comes into an S3 bucket that will trigger an AWS Lambda, and that will do some transformation for you on such data. And then after which we are going to have another video whereby we are going to be using Airflow to orchestrate processes that involves Lambda function. Okay, now I hope you guys now understand what AWS Lambda is, okay, and how you can write your very first own Lambda function. Okay, if you find this video valuable, please subscribe to our channel and click on the notification button so that you can be notified whenever we release any of our videos. Also, do not forget to click that like button right now, because you know, the more you click the like button, the better we are ranked by the YouTube algorithm. Okay, and also do not forget to share this video, because you know we want more people to benefit. The more you like it, the more you share it, the more we have more people subscribe. That tells us that our videos are valuable, and then we can be motivated to do more of it. All right, guys, I will see you in the next video. Bye.